The pen trembled in my weathered hand as I stared at the document spread across the mahogany desk. 37 years I'd lived in that house. 37 years of my husband's laughter echoing through those walls, of birthday parties and Christmas mornings, of my grandchildren taking their first steps on the living room carpet. Now the lawyer sat across from me, his eyes unreadable behind wire-rimmed glasses, while my son shifted uncomfortably in the leather chair beside me. The silence stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. "Mrs. Patterson," the lawyer said quietly, "you understand what signing this means?" I looked down at the papers again, then slowly lifted my eyes to meet my daughter-in-law's face. She stood frozen by the window, her designer purse clutched against her chest like armor, no longer the sweet girl who'd once called me Mom. The afternoon sun caught the tears on my cheeks, but for the first time in months, they weren't tears of defeat. "Oh, I understand. Perfectly," I whispered. "My name is Eleanor Patterson, and I'm 72 years old. What I'm about to tell you will make you question everything you think you know about family loyalty, about trust, and about what an old woman is capable of when she's pushed too far." The call came at exactly 3:17 in the afternoon. I remember because I was watching my soap opera, and the clock on the cable box seemed to mock me as my daughter-in-law's voice sliced through the phone like a cold blade. "Eleanor, I need to tell you something." No greeting, no warmth, just that flat business-like tone she'd been using with me ever since Richard died last spring. I muted the television with a trembling hand. "What is it, Karen?" "The house is sold." 3 words. That's all it took to shatter the last solid thing in my world. I sat there in Richard's old recliner, the brown leather one that still smelled faintly of his aftershave, and felt the air leave my lungs. "What do you mean, sold?" "The real estate. Market is hot right now, and we got an excellent offer. The papers were signed this morning." Her voice carried that same efficiency she used when discussing grocery lists or soccer schedules for the grandkids. My fingers gripped the phone so hard my arthritic knuckles went white. "But this is my house, Karen. Richard left it to me." A pause, then that laugh, not quite cruel, but close enough to make my chest tighten. "Eleanor, honey, you can't manage a place this big anymore. Michael and I have been carrying the property taxes and maintenance for months. We're just being practical." Practical. The word tasted like ashes in my mouth. "Where am I supposed to go?" "We've found you a lovely assisted living facility. Sunset Manor has an opening next week. It's very nice. They serve 3 meals a day, and there's bingo on Tuesdays." Bingo on Tuesdays. As if that was supposed to make up for losing the home where I'd raised my son, where I'd nursed my husband through cancer, where I'd planned to die surrounded by 43 years of memories. I tried to speak, but my throat had closed up tight. Through the living room window, I could see the maple tree Richard had planted when Michael was born. 35 years old now, its branches reaching toward the afternoon sky like arms stretched in surrender. "The moving truck will be there Friday morning," Karen continued. "You should start packing what you want to keep. Nothing too big, of course. The rooms at Sunset Manor are—" "Karen, wait." The line went dead. I sat there holding the silent phone, staring at the family photos lined up on the mantel. Michael's high school graduation, our anniversary trips to the lake, the grandchildren, Emma and little Jake, building sandcastles last summer, right here in the backyard. Would they even remember this house when they grew up? Would they remember Sunday dinners in the kitchen, or the way Grandpa used to lift them up to pick apples from the tree out back? The front door key jangled in the lock, and my heart jumped. For one wild second, I thought it might be Richard coming home from work, calling out, "Ellie, I'm home," like he had every day for 40 years. But it was just Michael, my son, letting himself in with the spare key he'd insisted on having after the funeral. "Hi, Mom." He didn't quite meet my eyes as he sat down on the couch across from me. At 35, he still had his father's broad shoulders, but something in his posture reminded me of the little boy who used to hide behind my skirt when he was in trouble. "Did you know?" My voice came out smaller than I'd intended. He rubbed his hands together, a nervous habit he'd had since childhood. "Mom, we've talked about this. The house is too much for you. You're here all alone, and we worry—" "Did you know about the sale?" He was quiet for so long I could hear the ancient refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Finally, he nodded. Something cracked inside my chest. Not broke, cracked. Like ice on a pond just beginning to thaw. "We didn't want to upset you unnecessarily," he said. "Karen handled all the paperwork. She's good with that stuff. And you know how you get confused with legal documents." Confused, another word that tasted like betrayal. "I'm not confused, Michael, I'm old. There's a difference." He leaned forward, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the boy who used to crawl into my lap when thunderstorms scared him. "Mom, this is what's best. You'll have people to take care of you, activities, other folks your age to talk to. You won't be lonely anymore." Lonely. As if being surrounded by strangers could cure the loneliness that had settled into my bones the day we buried Richard. As if losing the last piece of our life together would somehow make me feel less alone. "When do I have to leave?" "Friday morning. I know it seems fast, but the buyers want to close quickly. And honestly, it's better to rip the Band-Aid off. The longer we wait, the harder it'll be." I nodded slowly, my mind already spinning. Friday. 4 days to pack up a lifetime. 4 days to say goodbye to everything I'd ever called home. After Michael left, promising to come back tomorrow with boxes and his apologetic smile, I walked through each room like I was touring a museum of my own life. The kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals, where Richard had proposed to me all those years ago while I was making Sunday gravy. The bedroom where we'd shared our dreams and fears, where he'd died, holding my hand. The nursery that became Michael's room, then the guest room where the grandchildren slept when they visited. Every corner held a story. Every wall had witnessed our love, our fights, our quiet moments of happiness. And Karen wanted to erase it all for what? Money? Convenience? I stopped in front of Richard's old desk in the study. It was solid oak, built to last generations, with deep drawers that held decades of important papers, tax returns, insurance policies, warranty cards for appliances that had long since been replaced. And somewhere in there, I knew, was his will. I hadn't looked at it since the funeral. The lawyer had explained the basics. The house was mine, along with most of the savings account. Michael would inherit everything when I died, but until then, it was mine to do with as I pleased. Or was it? My fingers traced the brass handles of the bottom drawer. Something was wrong here. Something Karen wasn't telling me. If the house was legally mine, how could she sell it without my signature? How could she just take it? Unless... The thought hit me like a cold slap. What if she'd been forging my signature? What if there were documents I'd signed that I didn't understand? Papers disguised as medical forms or insurance updates? I sank into Richard's old chair and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, I decided, I was going to call the lawyer myself, not Karen's lawyer, not Michael's friend from college who'd handled the probate, my own lawyer. Because something told me that my daughter-in-law had just made a very big mistake, and I wasn't nearly as helpless as she thought. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house settling seemed to whisper. I lay in the bed Richard and I had shared for 43 years, staring at the ceiling and trying to make sense of what felt like a puzzle with missing pieces. At 6 a.m., I gave up on sleep and padded to the kitchen in my slippers. The morning routine felt sacred somehow. Filling the kettle, measuring out the coffee, watching the sun creep across the backyard through the window over the sink. How many more times would I do this? How many more mornings would I see that maple tree catch the early light? I was reaching for my favorite mug, the one Michael had made me in pottery class when he was 12, with "World's Best Mom" painted in shaky blue letters, when I noticed something that made my hand freeze halfway to the cabinet. The sugar bowl was wrong. Not wrong exactly, but different. It sat in the same spot on the counter where it had lived for 20 years, but it was turned slightly, the handle facing the wrong direction. Such a small thing. Anyone else would have missed it completely, but I hadn't moved it. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the morning air. I set the mug down carefully and walked to the front door, checking the deadbolt. Locked. The back door, also locked. No signs of forced entry, no broken windows, nothing missing as far as I could tell. But someone had been in my house. I thought about Karen's confident voice on the phone yesterday. The papers were signed this morning. How could she be so sure about paperwork for my house? How could she know exactly when things would happen? My hands shook as I made my coffee, black instead of with sugar. I couldn't bring myself to touch that bowl. At exactly 9 a.m., I called information and asked for the number of Walter Brennan, the lawyer who'd handled Richard's will. Not the young man Karen had insisted on using for the probate. Someone older, someone I could trust. Patterson, Eleanor Patterson, I told his secretary when she answered. I need to see Mr. Brennan today. It's urgent. I'm sorry, Mrs. Patterson, but Mr. Brennan is booked solid this week. I could squeeze you in next Tuesday. My house is being sold out from under me on Friday, I interrupted. I think someone may be forging my signature on legal documents. Now, does that sound like something that can wait until Tuesday? 20 minutes later, I was sitting in Walter Brennan's wood-paneled office, a cup of real coffee warming my hands and the familiar smell of law books making me feel slightly more human. Walter was my age, maybe a year or two older, with kind eyes behind thick glasses and the patience of someone who'd spent 40 years listening to people's troubles. He'd drawn up our wills, handled the purchase of the house, guided us through Richard's estate planning. If anyone would tell me the truth, it would be Walter. Eleanor, he said, settling behind his desk with a manila folder thick with papers. I pulled your file as soon as you called. Tell me what's happening. I told him everything. Karen's phone call, Michael's awkward visit, the impossible timeline, my growing suspicion that something wasn't right. Walter listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment, studying the documents in front of him. Eleanor, according to the will I have on file, the house is yours. Full ownership, no liens, no conditions. No one can sell that property without your signature on a deed transfer. He looked up at me over his glasses. No one. The relief was so overwhelming I nearly cried. Then Karen was lying? Either lying or seriously misinformed. Walter pulled out a thick document and spread it across his desk. This is a copy of Richard's will, filed with the probate court 6 months ago. Very clear, very straightforward. You inherit the house, the savings account, and all personal property. Michael inherits everything when you pass away, but until then, you have complete control. I leaned forward, squinting at the legal language. But Karen said the papers were already signed. Then she either has a forged document or she's bluffing. Walter's expression hardened. Eleanor, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Have you signed any legal documents in the past few months? Anything at all? Insurance forms, medical papers, even something that seemed routine? My mind raced back through the months since Richard's funeral. There had been so many papers, so many forms, insurance claims, Medicare paperwork, notifications from the bank. Michael brought me some forms last month, I said slowly. Said they were updates to my Medicare coverage. Karen was with him. She showed me where to sign. Walter's pen stopped moving. How many pages? I don't remember. Maybe 4 or 5? Karen said it was just bureaucratic nonsense, that I didn't need to read through all the fine print. Do you have copies? My heart sank. Karen said she'd mail them to me once they were processed. I never got anything. Walter was already reaching for his phone. I'm calling my investigator. If someone's been forging documents or tricking you into signing papers, you didn't understand. We're going to find out. He paused, his hand on the receiver. Eleanor, I need to ask you something else. Do you want to keep that house? The question caught me off guard. Of course I do. It's my home. Then we're going to fight this. But I need you to understand, this might get ugly. If Karen and Michael have been planning this for months, if they've been systematic about it, they're not going to give up easily. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the sugar, bowl, the confident tone in Karen's voice, the way Michael couldn't meet my eyes. The months of small comments about how the house was too much for me, how I was getting confused about simple things. They thought I was weak. They thought I was helpless. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Mr. Brennan," I said, my voice steadier than it had been in months. "I've buried a husband, raised a son, and survived 72 years on this earth. I think I can handle whatever my daughter-in-law wants to throw at me." He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen in months. "That's what I was hoping you'd say. Now here's what we're going to do." For the next hour, Walter outlined our strategy. First, his investigator would trace any documents that had been filed regarding my property. Second, we'd request copies of everything I'd signed in the past 6 months. Third, if we found evidence of fraud or forgery, we'd take it straight to the district attorney's office. "But won't this destroy my relationship with Michael?" I asked. Walter's expression softened. "Eleanor, I've seen this before. Adult children who think they know what's best for aging parents, sometimes to the point where they justify breaking the law. Michael might be genuinely convinced he's helping you. Or," he paused, "he might be more involved than you think." The possibility hit me like a physical blow. My Michael, my sweet boy, who used to bring me dandelions and call them flowers, who'd cried for hours when his goldfish died, who'd promised at his father's funeral that he'd always take care of me. "There's something else," Walter said gently. "If this house sale goes through on Friday, it's going to be much harder to reverse. We need to stop it before it happens. I'm going to file an emergency injunction this afternoon, but I need you to do something for me. Anything. Go home and search through Richard's desk. Look for any papers you might have forgotten about. Insurance, policies, bank statements, anything that might show a pattern of unusual activity. And Eleanor?" He leaned forward. "Don't tell Michael or Karen what you're doing. Not yet." I drove home in a daze, Walter's words echoing in my mind. Don't tell Michael. The idea of keeping secrets from my own son felt like swallowing glass. But as I pulled into my driveway, I reminded myself, I noticed Karen's silver BMW parked across the street, just sitting there as if she was watching the house. Watching me. I parked in the garage and went inside through the kitchen, my heart hammering. The sugar bowl was back in its proper position, handle facing the right way. Someone had definitely been in my house. And now I knew exactly who. I waited in the kitchen for 20 minutes, watching Karen's BMW through the lace curtains. She just sat there, engine running, occasionally checking her phone, waiting for something, or someone. When she finally drove away, I felt like I could breathe again. Richard's desk sat in the corner of our small study like a fortress of dark wood and brass fittings. He'd been meticulous about paperwork, every bank statement filed by date, every receipt tucked into its proper folder. If there were answers to be found, they'd be here. I started with the bottom drawer, the one I'd been afraid to open yesterday. Inside, beneath the neat stacks of tax returns and insurance policies, I found something that made my blood run cold. A checkbook I'd never seen before. It was from our local bank, but the account number was different from our joint checking account. This one had only my name on it, Eleanor Marie Patterson, and according to the register, it had been active for the past 4 months. I flipped through the carbon copies of the checks, my hands trembling. September 15th, $12,800 to Pacific Property Management. October 3rd, $119.50 to Senior Care Solutions. October 22nd, $3,200 to Sunshine Realty Services. None of it made sense. I hadn't written these checks. I'd never heard of these companies, but the signatures looked like mine. My legs felt weak, so I sank into Richard's chair and stared at the evidence of what could only be fraud. Someone had been writing checks in my name for months. Someone had opened this account without my knowledge and been systematically draining money from... Where? I grabbed our regular bank statements from the file cabinet. Our joint checking account showed automatic transfers going out every month. $5,000 in September, $6,000 in October, $7,500 last month. The memo line always read the same thing. E. Patterson. Medical expenses. I hadn't had any medical expenses beyond my regular doctor visits and prescriptions, but someone wanted it to look like I had. The phone rang, making me jump so hard I knocked over Richard's coffee mug, the one I'd kept on his desk since he died, still stained with the last coffee he'd ever drunk. "Hello? Mom, it's Michael. I'm coming over, with some boxes. We should start packing up Dad's study tonight." Not tonight. Not when I was so close to understanding what they'd done to me. "Actually, sweetheart, I'm feeling a bit tired. Could we do it tomorrow instead?" A pause. "Mom, we don't have time to put this off. The movers come Friday morning, remember? Karen's already arranged for the donation truck to pick up Dad's furniture tomorrow afternoon." The donation truck. They were getting rid of Richard's desk, his filing cabinets, all. The evidence of their theft. How convenient. "I suppose you're right," I managed. "But give me an hour. I want to look through his papers one more time. For sentimental reasons. Of course. Take all the time you need." The line went dead, and I knew I had maybe 45 minutes before Michael arrived with his boxes and his guilty smile. 45 minutes to document everything. I yanked open every drawer, photographing documents with the digital camera Emma had given me last Christmas. Bank statements, the mysterious checkbook, insurance papers, and then, in the very back of the bottom drawer, something that made my heart stop. A manila envelope marked "Eleanor Private" in Richard's careful handwriting. Inside was a letter dated just 2 weeks before he died. "My dearest Ellie, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're probably confused about some financial matters. I need you to know that I suspected Karen was up to something, but I didn't have proof before the cancer. Got too bad to think clearly. 3 months ago, I caught her in my study, going through the desk when she thought we were both napping. When I asked what she was doing, she said she was organizing our papers to help us manage things better. But I found documents moved around, and the next week, Michael started talking about how we needed to simplify our finances. I opened a separate savings account at First National Bank, account number 47829-301. It's in your name only. I transferred $127,000 there before I got too sick to manage things myself. The account information is in the safety deposit box, along with copies of our original wills. Karen doesn't know about this money. If something happens to the house, if they try to force you out, you have options, you have power. Don't let them convince you that you're helpless. You're the strongest woman I've ever known, and you don't need their pity or their help. The safety deposit box key is taped under the bottom drawer of my desk, right side. I love you, Ellie. Fight for what's ours. Richard. I read the letter 3 times before it fully sank in. Richard had known. He'd suspected Karen months before he died, and he'd protected me the only way he could. I ran my fingers along the bottom of the drawer until I felt the small piece of tape. The key was tiny, brass, with the bank's logo etched into the metal. $127,000. More than enough to fight them in court. More than enough to keep my house. The front door opened, and I heard Michael's voice calling out, "Mom, I'm here!" I shoved everything back into the desk, slipped the letter and key into my cardigan pocket, and closed the drawers just as his footsteps reached the study. "Hey, you ready to start packing?" He had an armload of flattened cardboard boxes and that apologetic smile I was beginning to hate. Almost. I stood up slowly, hoping he couldn't see how my hands were shaking. Just saying goodbye to this room, I suppose. Michael's expression softened. And for a moment, he looked like the little boy who used to help his father organize these same papers. "I know this is hard, Mom, but Dad would want you to be safe and taken care of. Dad would want me to fight for what's ours." But I just nodded and moved toward the door. "Actually," I said, turning back, "maybe we should pack this room last. Save it for tomorrow? I'm not quite ready." Michael hesitated, then shrugged. "Sure, we can start with the guest room instead." We spent the next 2 hours boxing up linens and holiday decorations, making small talk about the grandchildren and the weather. Normal conversation that felt surreal when I knew what I knew. Every few minutes, I touched the letter in my pocket, reassuring myself it was real. At 9 o'clock, Michael kissed my forehead and left, promising to return early in the morning with Karen to tackle the bigger items. The moment his taillights disappeared down the street, I grabbed my purse and drove to the bank. The night deposit box was in the lobby, but I needed to wait until morning to access the safety deposit box. Still, I had to try something. ATM, I inserted my card and checked the balance on our joint checking account. $3,147.63. 6 months ago, that account had held over $40,000. They'd been systematically stealing from me for months, creating fake medical expenses, forging my signature, planning to sell my house and pocket the proceeds. And Michael, my own son, was part of it. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow, doubling me over in the bank parking lot. I sat in my car and sobbed until there were no tears left, mourning not just the money or the house, but the loss of the son I thought I knew. But when the crying stopped, something else took its place. Something cold and determined and utterly focused. Richard had given me the tools to fight back. Walter Brennan was already working on the legal side. And tomorrow morning, I was going to that safety deposit box to arm myself with everything I needed to destroy their carefully laid plans. They thought they were dealing with a confused old woman who'd sign anything they put in front of her. Tomorrow, they were going to learn just how wrong they were. As I drove home, I noticed Karen's BMW parked 2 blocks from my house, hidden behind a delivery truck, but not well enough. Still watching, still waiting. Let her watch. Let her think she was in control, because the game was about to change, and I held all the cards she didn't even know existed. I was at the bank when it opened at 9 a.m., standing outside the doors like a woman possessed. The night manager probably thought I was homeless. I'd barely slept, my hair was a mess, and I was wearing the same clothes from yesterday. But I didn't care how I looked. I only cared about what was waiting for me in that safety deposit box. The vault was cold and sterile, all stainless steel and fluorescent lights. The bank officer, a young woman with perfect makeup and a practiced smile, led me to box 2847 and inserted her key alongside mine. "Take all the time you need, Mrs. Patterson. Just ring the bell when you're finished." The box was heavier than I'd expected. Inside, Richard had left me a roadmap to reclaim my life. Bank statements showing the secret account, not $127,000, but $143,000. He'd been socking money away for longer than I'd realized. Stock certificates I'd forgotten we owned. Insurance policies with me as the sole beneficiary. And most importantly, a manila folder labeled Karen Evidence. My hands shook as I opened it. Photocopies of checks made out to fictitious companies, all signed with my forged signature. Credit card statements showing purchases I'd never made. Furniture deliveries to an address I didn't recognize. Spa treatments at an upscale resort. Charges at expensive restaurants during times when I'd been home eating soup for dinner. A private investigator's report detailing Karen's gambling problem. Apparently, she owed $89,000 to various casinos in Atlantic City. But the last document made me sink into the small chair they'd provided. It was a real estate listing for my house, dated 3 weeks before Richard died. 3 weeks before. The asking price was $680,000, nearly twice what we'd paid for it 40 years ago. They'd been planning this while my husband was still alive. I photographed everything with trembling fingers, then locked the originals back in the box. As I walked through the bank lobby, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Karen and I are coming over at 10 to finish packing." Big day, if only he knew. I stopped at the customer service desk and withdrew $5,000 in cash, enough for whatever legal fees might come up, enough to prove I wasn't the helpless old woman they thought I was. The teller counted out the bills with efficient precision, but I caught her glancing at my face with concern. "Mrs. Patterson, are you all right? You look a little pale." Such a simple question, but it nearly broke me. When was the last time someone had asked if I was all right? When was the last time anyone had cared about my well-being instead of just managing it? "I'm perfect," I said, and meant it. Back home, I had 30 minutes before they arrived. 30 minutes to set the stage for what needed to happen next. I called Walter Brennan first. "I found everything," I told him. Richard left me proof of the forgeries, evidence of the gambling debts, documentation going back months. They've been planning this since before he died. Eleanor, this is excellent news for our case, but I need you to be careful. If they realize you're onto them, they're coming over in 20 minutes to help me pack. What should I do? A pause. Act normal. Don't let them know you've discovered anything. Can you do that? Could I look my son in the eye and pretend I didn't know he'd been stealing from me? Could I smile at Karen while knowing she'd forged my signature dozens of times? Yes, I said. I can do that. Good. The injunction hearing is set for tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. If we can present this evidence to the judge, we can stop the sale and possibly get criminal charges filed. Just hold on for 18 more hours. 18 hours. I could manage 18 hours. I was arranging the throw pillows on the couch. Nervous energy, I suppose, when I heard Karen's BMW pull into the driveway. Through the window, I watched her and Michael get out, both carrying multiple boxes and wearing matching expressions of determined efficiency. They looked like they were going to a funeral. "Morning, Mom," Michael called out as he let himself in with his key. "Ready to tackle Dad's study today?" "As ready as I'll ever be," I said, and it wasn't a lie. Karen followed him in, wearing a cream-colored sweater that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She gave me one of her practiced smiles, the kind she used at PTA meetings and charity luncheons. "Eleanor, I brought some special archival boxes for Richard's important papers. We want to make sure everything is properly preserved." She held up a box marked "Donate" in thick black letters. Donate. Right to the trash, more likely. "That's very thoughtful," I said. "Should we start with the filing cabinets?" "Actually," Karen said, "I thought we could start by just clearing everything out, and then you can sort through it at your new place. Less overwhelming for me. Or less chance for me to see what they were throwing away?" I watched them work with the detached fascination of someone studying dangerous animals. Karen went straight for the desk drawers, pulling out handfuls of papers and dropping them into the donate box without even glancing at them. Michael focused on the filing cabinets, creating neat stacks on the floor. "Oh, look at this," Karen said, holding up our marriage certificate. "So sweet. I'm sure you'll want to keep this one." She set it aside with exaggerated care, then immediately went back to shoving bank statements into the donation box. Important documents, insurance papers, tax records, all of it disappearing into boxes marked for disposal. "Karen," I said carefully, "shouldn't I look through those papers first? Some of them might be important." She laughed, that tinkling sound that had once seemed charming, but now scraped against my nerves like fingernails on glass. "Oh, Eleanor, it's just old bills and bank statements, nothing you need to worry about anymore. We've already transitioned all your important accounts. We've already transitioned." As if it had been a group decision. I bit my tongue and continued watching them systematically destroy the paper trail of their crimes. But what they didn't know was that the real evidence was safely locked away at the bank, and copies were sitting in Walter Brennan's office. "Mom, where do you want us to put Dad's desk?" Michael asked. "The donation truck said they could take it. But if it has sentimental value," the desk where I'd found Richard's letter, the desk that held 40 years of our financial history, they wanted to donate it, destroy it, along with any evidence I might have missed. "It does have sentimental value," I said quietly. "But it's too big for my new room, isn't it?" Karen jumped in immediately. "Much too big. The rooms at Sunset Manor are quite cozy. You'll be much happier with less clutter." Less clutter. Less evidence. I nodded and smiled, playing the part of the confused old woman they expected me to be. But inside, I was cataloging every lie, every manipulation, every casual cruelty. Tomorrow morning, in front of a judge, I was going to present them with a bill for every single one. By noon, they'd packed up 30 years of our life into a dozen boxes, most of them marked for donation. The study looked hollow and strange, like a room where people had once lived, but left in a hurry. "There," Karen said, dusting off her hands with, "That wasn't so bad, was it? Tomorrow we'll tackle the bedroom, and then you'll be all set for your move on Friday." Friday. The day that was never going to come. Actually, I said. I was thinking I might go to the courthouse tomorrow morning, just to make sure all the paperwork is in order for the house sale. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael and Karen exchanged a look, quick but not quick enough. The courthouse? Karen's voice was carefully neutral. Whatever. For? Oh, just peace of mind. You know how I worry about legal things. I thought I'd check with the recorder's office, make sure everything's filed properly. Mom, Michael said gently, that's really not necessary. Karen's lawyer has handled everything. You don't need to worry about the details. But Karen's face had gone pale under her perfect makeup. She knew what I might find at the courthouse. She knew what questions I might ask. You know what? She said, her voice slightly higher than usual. Why don't Michael and I come with you? We can all go together, make sure you get the answers you need. The last thing they wanted was for me to go alone, which meant it was exactly what I needed to do. That's sweet of you to offer, I said. But I think I'd like to handle this myself. It's important for me to feel like I'm still capable of managing my own affairs. Another look between them. This one lasted longer. Of course, Karen said finally. You're absolutely capable. But maybe we should reschedule? Tomorrow's going to be such a busy day with the final packing. Oh, I'll go early. Before you arrive. I'm an early riser anyway. I walked them to the door, thanking them for their help, playing the grateful mother-in-law right up until their taillights disappeared down the street. Then I called Walter Brennan. They took the bait, I told him. Tomorrow morning, they're going to show up here expecting to find me confused and compliant. Instead, they're going to find a process server with a lawsuit and a court order freezing all assets related to this house. Eleanor, Walter said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Remind me never to underestimate you. As I hung up the phone, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back at me wasn't the broken widow who'd answered Karen's phone call yesterday. This woman had steel in her spine and fire in her eyes. Tomorrow, the real game would begin. And I was ready to win. I was dressed and ready by 7 a.m., wearing the navy blue suit I'd bought for Richard's funeral, the one that made me feel like I could face anything the world threw at me. My hair was styled, my makeup carefully applied, and the manila folder containing copies of all the evidence sat on the passenger seat of my car like a loaded weapon. The courthouse was an imposing brick building downtown, with marble steps worn smooth by decades of people seeking justice. I'd never been inside before, but today it felt like sanctuary. Walter met me in the lobby, looking every inch the seasoned attorney in his charcoal gray suit. Ready for this? I touched the folder under my arm. I've been ready for months. I just didn't know it. The hearing was in Judge Patricia Hendricks' courtroom. A stern-looking woman in her 50s who, according to Walter, had little patience for financial elder abuse. We sat at a long table facing the judge's bench, while across the aisle, Karen's lawyer shuffled through papers with increasing agitation. At exactly 10 a.m., Judge Hendricks entered, and we all stood. Be seated. This is an emergency hearing regarding a request for injunctive relief in the matter of Patterson versus Pacific Realty Group and others. Mr. Brennan, you may proceed. Walter rose, his voice carrying the weight of 40 years of legal experience. Your Honor, my client, Eleanor Patterson, is the victim of an elaborate fraud designed to steal her home and life savings. The defendants have forged her signature, created false documents, and manipulated an elderly widow into believing she had no choice but to surrender her property. He presented the evidence methodically: the forged checks, the mysterious account withdrawals, the real estate listing dated before Richard's death. With each document, I watched Karen's lawyer grow paler. Your Honor, the lawyer interrupted, my clients were acting in Mrs. Patterson's best interests. The elderly woman was clearly confused about her financial situation and— I object to that characterization, Walter shot back. Mrs. Patterson is here today, fully competent, and prepared to testify about what was done to her. Judge Hendricks looked directly at me. Mrs. Patterson, please approach the witness stand. My legs felt unsteady as I walked across the courtroom, but my voice was clear when I raised my right hand and swore to tell the truth. Mrs. Patterson, Walter began, Please tell the court about the phone call you received on Tuesday. I told them everything. Karen's cold announcement that the house was sold. Michael's uncomfortable explanations. The discovery of the forged checks and the mysterious account withdrawals. Richard's hidden letter warning me about Karen's behavior. And you had no knowledge of these financial transactions before this week? None whatsoever. I trusted my daughter-in-law to help me with paperwork after my husband died. I never imagined she was stealing from me. The courtroom doors opened, with a loud creak, and I looked up to see Michael and Karen hurrying down the aisle. Karen's face was flushed, her perfect composure finally cracking. Michael looked like he was going to be sick. They'd expected to find me at home, packing boxes and preparing for my exile to the nursing home. Instead, they found an empty house and a process server with a court summons. Judge Hendricks called a brief recess, and I watched from the witness stand as Karen whispered furiously to her lawyer. Michael sat alone, staring at his hands. When the hearing resumed, Karen's lawyer made a desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Patterson, has indeed suffered from some confusion since her husband's death. The documents she signed were legitimate attempts to help her manage her finances during a difficult time. The real estate transaction was initiated at her request. That's a lie. The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. Judge Hendricks raised an eyebrow. I'm sorry, Your Honor, I said, but I couldn't sit here and listen to more lies. I never requested anything. I was manipulated, lied to, and stolen from by people I trusted. I looked directly at Karen, then at Michael. I raised you, I said to my son. I loved you. Your father and I sacrificed for years to give you every opportunity. And this is how you repay us? By stealing from me and throwing me away like garbage? Michael's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked like the little boy who used to cry when he broke something valuable. Mom, I never wanted, he started. Don't. My voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Don't you dare tell me what you wanted. You wanted my house. You wanted my money. You wanted me out of the way so you could live your life without the inconvenience of caring for an aging parent. Karen stood up abruptly. Eleanor, you're being dramatic. We were trying to help you. Help me? I laughed, and the sound was harsh in the formal courtroom. You were helping yourself to $89,000 of my money to pay your gambling debts. Did you think I wouldn't find out about Atlantic City, Karen? Did you think I was too stupid to follow a paper trail? The blood drained from her face completely. Her lawyer grabbed her arm, trying to pull her back into her seat, but she jerked away. You don't understand, she said, her voice rising. We have expenses. We have the kids' college funds. You have sticky fingers and a gambling problem, I said. And? You thought a confused old widow would be an easy mark. Judge Hendricks banged her gavel. That's enough. Mrs. Patterson, please step down. I've heard enough to make my ruling. I walked back to the table on shaking legs, but my spine was straight. Walter squeezed my shoulder as I sat down. Based on the evidence presented, Judge Hendricks announced, I find clear and convincing proof of financial elder abuse and fraud. The injunction is granted. All transactions relating to the Patterson property are hereby frozen pending a full investigation. Furthermore, I'm ordering the district attorney's office to review this case for possible criminal charges. Karen let out a strangled sob. Michael buried his face in his hands. But the judge wasn't finished. Mrs. Patterson, you'll be pleased to know that your home cannot be sold without your express written consent, properly witnessed and notarized. All accounts that were accessed without your permission will be frozen, and any funds that were illegally transferred will be restored to your control. It was over. In less than 2 hours, I'd gone from helpless victim to vindicated survivor. As we gathered our papers to leave, I heard footsteps behind me. Michael appeared at my elbow, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. Mom, please, can we talk? I know this looks bad, but if you'd just let me explain. I studied his face. The face I'd kissed goodnight for 18 years. The face that had smiled at me across Christmas dinners and birthday parties. The face that had promised to take care of me at his father's funeral. You want to explain? I asked quietly. Explain how you watched your wife forge my signature. Explain how you helped her steal my money. Explain how you were willing to throw me into a nursing home so you could sell my house. It wasn't like that, he whispered. Karen said you were getting confused, that you couldn't manage on your own anymore. She said the nursing home would be better for you, safer. And the money? Was stealing from me safer too? He couldn't meet my eyes. I didn't know about the gambling until last month. When I found out, I told her she had to stop, but she said it was too late, that we were in too deep. So you decided to throw me under the bus to save yourselves. No, I never wanted to hurt you. I thought we were helping. I looked at this man who was my son, but felt like a stranger. Michael, your father and I loved you more than our own lives. We would have done anything for you. If you'd come to me and said you were in financial trouble, I would have helped. If you'd asked me to downsize, I might have considered it. But you didn't ask. You lied and stole and manipulated because it was easier than treating me like a human being with rights and feelings. Mom, please. I'm going home now, I said. To my house, the one your father and I bought, the one we raised you in, the one where I plan to live until I die. If you want a relationship with me going forward, you'll need to earn it, starting with making sure Karen pays back every penny she stole. I walked away without looking back, leaving him standing in the courthouse hallway with his broken promises and his tears. Outside, the autumn air felt crisp and clean, full of possibility. Walter was waiting by his car, a satisfied smile on his weathered face. "How does it feel to win?" he asked. I thought about it for a moment. The victory felt good, but it was bittersweet. I'd saved my house and my money, but I'd lost my son, at least the son I thought I knew. It feels like justice, I said finally, but it also feels like the beginning of something new. What's next for you, Eleanor? I looked up at the courthouse steps, then at the busy street beyond, full of people going about their lives. For the first time in months, I felt like I was one of them again, a person with agency, with choices, with a future I could control. I think, I said, slowly, I'm going to learn to live again. As I drove home, I passed the sign for Sunset Manor. Tomorrow, some other family would probably be having the same conversation about their elderly parent that Michael and Karen had been having about me. But this time, I was going to be ready to fight back. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do to someone is underestimate them. And sometimes the most powerful thing an old woman can do is refuse to go quietly.